very flexible today, and so grateful for the chance to spend some time with you all in the Western Idaho Conference of PMI. I'm going to be sharing screen here in a moment, so if I could get there we go, confirmation that it looks like it's sharing. For those of you that are just joining, have been on for a couple of minutes, we're just getting started. My name is Michelle Choate. I am an independent consultant, and I provide coaching services for teams and leaders, as well as organizational development, leadership development, and cultural development. I love data. So as project managers, I don't know how many people run into stakeholders that don't say that or don't feel that. I think data is such an important part of the work we do, and you're going to hear me talk a lot about the value of data today in terms of how we manage ourselves in challenging conversations. For me to capture data, for you to tell me your story, we have a couple of different tools. So I've put up a slide. I'm going to ask you to just kind of prepare for the conversation. The first thing is I recommend a phone, using a smartphone, that capture that QR code on your screen. This will take you to a survey tool called Slido. By capturing that code and entering the passcode, you should be taken to the surveying environment for this meeting. If you have two monitors, prefer to use your web browser on your computer, you can go to slido.com and enter the event code and the passcode as described. I also ask that you kind of step out of your comfort zone a little bit, pick up a utensil that is used for writing. If you just go way back in time, you may remember these are called pens or pencils, and a blank piece of paper or a notebook or a journal, some such thing. I'm going to ask you to practice a learning style with me called reflective practice. This isn't a touchy-feely, woo-woo meditative state, although it can invoke such if you're not careful. Just kidding. Really, it's a chance for you to learn from what you already know. And so by having that writing utensil, paper nearby, the ability for you to participate will be increased, and I think you'll get just great outcomes from our time together. Hopefully everybody's been able to access Slido. I will show you the Slido link again when we do a quick test question here in a moment. Just to move into the content to get us started. A lot of people use the phrase crucial conversations, and it comes from, actually, as I reached literally back to my bookshelf behind me, Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High by Patterson Grenny et al. This is my third copy, chock full of notes and information. I use Crucial Conversations as a reference tool. It's not the answer. It should help you explore questions to understand where to start when you have a challenging conversation. As well, because it's licensed material, I am a certified trainer of Crucial. What I have found in my coaching of teams and leaders is the hardest part is where to start with a crucial conversation. And so that's what we're going to spend a lot of time today exploring, the most effective way to hold a conversation that is laden with complexity, with emotion, and with risk, is to know what it is you really want from that conversation and how you're going to get there. So we're going to talk about concepts around positive intent a little bit, and really just deepen your own self-awareness about where you start from in conversations, and when they're most effective, what you're taking forward from those conversations to increase productivity and influence your stakeholders. For our time today, some other guidelines. The Slido is how I'll be capturing information from you. And so if you would please participate. There is not going to be audio, so I would love your feedback. That said, your questions, would love to engage with you. This format allows us to use the Q&A link to ask questions. Oh, there's a ping. We do have some lovely people who I got to hang out with yesterday for a bit, showing me how this functionality works, who are going to be watching the Q&A section. and interceding if questions pop up, and I'll be stopping occasionally to explore that. There's also a chat section. Please use that for a couple purposes. If you're having technological issues, we have some support people who will be online to help you and address those kind of off to the side. However, a couple times I may say, hey, share in the chat, blobbity, blobbity. Well, you can put blobbity, blobbity, but your answer would be preferred. Use the chat for that purpose as well, or to connect with each other, because this is, for all intents and purposes, a lunch and learn style. However, this is a chance for you to socialize and connect with people in your industry. Set aside other work. I know you think you can multitask. Biology and science says you can't. So go ahead and just stay engaged with the work that we're doing here together. Most of all, have fun. That's something that I take a great amount of value in. I find learning environments to be very sacred spaces. People have to be vulnerable to learn. They have to be curious to learn and open to learn and even uncomfortable to learn. Some of that flies in the face of fun as we define it. Find the fun in learning as we move through this content together. So I'm going to do a quick test now of the Slido. So everyone's going to get a chance to kind of play with it. And I just put a random question up simply as a chance for me to kind of get a sense of who are the people in the room, quote unquote, in the room, and give everyone a chance to see if the Slido is functioning for you. So you get another chance to log in here, if that's helpful to you.
Michelle, this is Brian. I'm in Slido and it looks good.
Awesome. Oh, good. And we're getting some answers. And hey, thank you for sharing, Brian. Great, 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 great. So we're getting a little feedback. People are using it. And student. Oh, that's so fun. So there's people that are really engaged in this learning environment. Wonderful. Business rule. So as I'm looking at these job titles, just an observation, so much of your work, based on what I see here, is the need to influence people, to engage with people in a meaningful way, in a way that can help them come along with you on journeys that in some cases they may not be ready for or skilled at. And so thanks for sharing your job titles. That was helpful to me. And I think for many of you now, you're getting a sense of how Slido works. So I'm going to go ahead and jump directly now into the content. We're getting, 22 respondents. Lovely. A great number of people are using the tool. And that's all I want to make sure. I'll ask you probably 3 or 4 more questions in Slido in this format. So just keep your phones handy if you're using your phone or your web browser open to Slido. What we're playing in today, what we're mucking about in, is what I like to call this kind of learning, is what it takes to prepare for a difficult conversation. Separating facts from stories, describing the drama triangle. So I think you'll find this interesting. It's a way to label a story and put yourself back in a powerful place rather than in a place of low power or no power, which sometimes happens in our workplaces and relationships. And finally, talk about how our stories can impact our motives, which for all intents and purposes can be one of the hugest derailers of effective management of difficult conversations. If I'm not clear on what it is I really want and I can express it in a meaningful way, I'm less likely to be effective. I'm going to create some rub or some tension. So that's what we're playing about in today. What makes conversation difficult? Well, think about the environment in which you work and the engagement with people that you need to have every day in a lot of different ways. Some of it is peer relationships that you need to find a way to create balance in priorities. Sometimes it's someone who works under or for you who's struggling to achieve the outcomes that you're helping them identify and work toward. Sometimes it's just kind of mean people, angry, misinformed, misdirected, disrespectful. Now, this list is obviously not all inclusive, because without any prevarication, I can tell you that what we're going to talk about today is as impactful and important in your personal lives as it is your professional lives. So, right, this is work. What about everything else? So let's talk about that as we move into the next section. This is where I'm going to ask you to go old school with me. Pick up I've got an example for you. Look, writing utensil, piece of paper, writing utensil, piece of paper. Go ahead and identify those tools, reconnect with them, reorient yourself to what hand you generally use. I'm going to ask you to do a reflection activity. And as I noted earlier, reflection is a means to learn. A reflection on practice means to look back at what you've done. Reflection in practice means in the moment, understanding what you are doing. The best way to become better in practice is to do reflection on practice. So we're going to do this activity. Grab your pen, paper. I'm going to give you about a 3 to 5 minute timer. I'll be checking in on chat to see how things are going. This is the topic. It's a Thursday evening, and you have just had one heck of a day. One heck of a day. You had a conversation with someone or an engagement with someone, you're working with someone, and you had this discussion, and it simply didn't go well. You walked away, you were feeling frustrated, irritated, disappointed. You were even surprised by what happened or by the outcome that didn't get. You were surprised by how they behaved and reacted back to you. It could be at work or it could be at home. Okay. What I want you to do is write it down. Write down on a piece of paper as if you were talking to your closest friend. You call up that friend on a Thursday night. You're like, I am done. I am done. You wouldn't even believe my day. I am so done. I need to talk to somebody. And you connect with that person and you sit down and you tell them everything about what happened in this really difficult interaction. Someone totally safe, someone who is a close friend or a confidant, someone who will totally empathize with you. Write it down. Literally no holds barred. You can use curse words, and you're not going to share it with anybody. Use curse words, use language, just get it out. All the bitterness, all the vitriol, whatever happens in this story that you're telling, just get it out. Include your feelings, the whole situation. Pretend like you're telling it to a safe friend. Again, not sharing it with anybody. Go ahead and start writing if you haven't. We're going to reference this practice, this reflection, a couple of times over the next 40 minutes or so. So really do take a couple minutes and get this experience out on paper. Just get it out. What you were thinking, what you were feeling. Thanks, Cheryl, for managing the technology on the QR code side of it. So I'm setting a timer. I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and I'm going to try and be quiet, which you can already tell is a challenge. The important thing in this activity is to really go back to that time when you had that feeling, those experiences, and just get it all written down in a way that is really reflective of how you were feeling. Sometimes people struggle with this activity because, oh, I don't have conflict. I don't have difficult conversations. And maybe it's not at work. It could be absolutely with family, with friends that you've had conflict with. It could be, heck, it could be with a vendor, somebody who comes to your home and helps you with plumbing, or a customer service representative in another environment or experience, something that just really, really got you upset, really got you frustrated and irritated, or they got really frustrated and irritated with you. I'm watching the chats and the questions, so if you have any clarifying questions you want to ask or observations about this activity. In my individual coaching, I use this kind of tool almost every time I visit with a client. The most powerful learning happens when you can really debrief an event or an experience in a productive way. the best place to start is this free form that you're engaging in right now. Just sharing without fear, without anxiety, with no risk, everything you were thinking and feeling. In the coaching environment, then a coach will act as a foil, as a mirror, and can even help you role play or work through how you would manage it differently. Then you can apply it, reflection, in action in future events. Got another 30. David, thanks for commenting that. Writing about it really does bring back the feelings versus just thinking about it. Very intentional activity to put pen to paper for these kinds of experiences. And we'll talk a little bit about the connection in your brain that you're experiencing right now. The feelings can get very strong. I mean, even when I think about my own experiences, I can feel it physically. Okay, you should have had 3 to 4 minutes. If you're still writing, please continue. It's helpful to kind of finish the experience through. As David noted, it does kind of create an escalation, and so you kind of want to process it through as much as possible. I'm going to move on to the next slide and just give you a little more background or context. It's not going to deeply impact how you use this reflection in the future of our learnings together, but that way we can keep the content moving forward. You're going to set this reflection aside for a couple minutes. I'll tell you when to pick it up. That's a good question. So we're going to come at this experience of exploring where to start with difficult conversation from 2 viewpoints. This is a model that I have been using for close to 20 years to talk about the capacity for people to really influence in their environments. If you look at it in this way, as a concentric circle set, you control you. And I'll call that your sphere of control. This is who you are. This is what you got. This little circle right here, that is you. The next circle, yellow, is influence. Those are the people around you. As a project manager, as a leader, as a powerful peer in complex work environments, your goals are most often to not control others, but to influence them. Now, I will say many of us are trying a lot to control a lot of things that are outside of our sphere of control. We have a very clearly defined scope in that sphere of control. At the heart of the work we're talking about today is your ability to control your emotion, your ability to control your story. How effectively you do that is going to determine how effective you are at influencing people. That border between control and influence is where boundary issues often occur. My boundaries get fuzzy when I try to control people I should be influencing or think I can, and vice versa. When the people around me have influence over me and it starts to creep into, and they start to control how I think and feel. And so when I say boundary, I don't mean, like a fence, although it can feel like it if you're being conscientious about it. It's having a clear understanding of what is your responsibility for you. If we're effective at influencing those around you, we're going to have better impacts on those things around you. Key to this is self-management and self-awareness. Okay? So we're going to come at it from both viewpoints. How your stories are influenced in unproductive ways by the patterns and behaviors of others, and how your own thinking can further diminish your capacity to influence. One of the most consistent questions I get when I'm coaching people around difficult conversations or really, really complex or strained relationships is, well, they won't. Well, they don't. Here's the deal. That sphere of control is very literal. There is one thing you can control. One thing, and that's you. Why focus on you? Well, sure, it would be nice to blame the other person, but in fact, it's your response to the other person that's creating part of the issue. Ideally, with emotional self-awareness and self-management, you get to know yourself well enough that you can understand what your motivations are and manage your emotions towards those motivations. You can't change others. You can only change you. Here's the trick question. I'm going to ask it 3,000 times of you. Who can you control? In the chat, what is the answer? Go ahead and type into the chat. What is the answer to the question? Who can you control? Yep. Me and only me. Yep. That's right. Me. Doesn't that feel good? Me. So if you want to bring, well, and maybe we think we can control others. Best of luck on that one. If you want to bring your best self to these complex conversations, it's really starting with self and not waiting for the other to come along. The book Crucial Conversations approaches the work in 3 steps. So I'm just going to share those steps with you, but I'm going to focus you back on where we're going to be working today. There's a before the conversation, there's a during the conversation, and there's an after the conversation. The question I get most often is, so blah, 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 blah. So what do I say when? That's not the place to start. That's the speaking persuasively, not abrasively, and making it safe. The when has to do with what it is you really want. What you say when is what you need, want, think, and feel in a way that's mutually respectful. What you say word-wise is really less of a priority than why you are saying it and how you're saying it. Regardless, this is key. This is like a key learning point. Regardless of what you say, the words you choose, people will trust your intent more than your content. So you got to get super clear up front in any complex conversation about what it is you're really trying to get out of that conversation, because that's what they're going to be wondering about and questioning. What is really the issue? That's the focus. Is it an event, like a singular experience or conversation you need to have? Is it a pattern of behavior that you need to help address or manage for, or the impact of those things on the quality of your relationship? It's critical you choose the issue that makes the conversation crucial ahead before you start the conversation, rather than just barreling into it and then realize you're already in it and mucking up. Before the dialogue begins, you have to get focused on a productive outcome. Okay? If you don't talk it out, you're going to act it out. So you might as well get that stuff clear up front. In Crucial Conversations, and this is straight from the book, there are 3 ways to define whether a conversation is crucial: high stakes, opposing opinions, and strong emotions. Any one of these 3 things can be present with either person. You may not think it's a high stakes opinion. You may not even realize you have an opinion that's different than the others. You don't even feel strongly about it. If the other person has any of these feelings about it and you have not explored them in a meaningful way, the conversation may become crucial. 2 things happen when a conversation becomes crucial. Because the stakes are rising, it can change permanently the perceptions of each person in the relationship. And we all know, at least I can think of experiences of my own, where I didn't realize it was a high stakes conversation until I was well deep into it and making a mess of it. And by then the harm is done. The other thing you need to know about crucial conversations, generally, I would say this in any conflict situation, is we don't behave our best because of strong emotions. So let's talk about emotions. I'm going to give you a quick definition. Emotions are fiction. What? Yes, emotions are a label that we give to a physiological experience we have that is based on a trigger in our brain caused by a little lump in the back of our brainstem called the amygdala that says you're not safe, so you need to find a way to be safe. And fear emotion is a product of that. And some fear emotions can evolve into things like anger or rage or disappointment, right? we have to understand, first of all, what we're feeling, when we're feeling. That's the emotional management part of it. And then determine what we're going to do with it. The bummer is our natural response is really to blame the other person, right? It's not my fault. Especially if we think we've been treated poorly. They make me mad. She drives me crazy. Because we're creating our own emotions, though, we can create better emotion, more productive emotion, more compassionate emotions, more curious emotions, ones that don't polarize people when there are high stakes, ones that bring people together. So if emotions are strong and negative, you get a couple choices. You can act on them or be acted on by them. Your final choice is really to choose a new one. Choose a new emotion. Sounds easy. I'm going to take you through a couple step-by-steps, and then we're going to talk about that. To make sure, though, that I'm being clear about what we're going to do in the next step, I want to ask you a quick question. How do you define a fact? I'm just going to open a Word document over in this window. What is a fact? I'll look for that in the chat. Facts can be proven. Yep, can be proven. Objectively measured, for example, Brian, observed and validated by multiple parties, yeah. Objective evidence, not subjective, good, objective, substantiated. Yeah. Good. It is known. It is known. I think it's a great one to start testing up against. Good, David and Lisa. It is something that you can test up against. Yep, you want to be able to validate a fact. I always think of the fly on the wall, right? Everybody in the room saw the same thing, experienced the same thing, can actually tell you the exact same story, and it's based in data. Well played, all. So let me give you the counterpoint to the rest of our conversation. What's a story? An experience. So I'm going to hope I say your name right, Ziad. I want to bring that up in a couple minutes. One person's perception of an event, entertainment, our ego building the event into what we think it is, provides information. Okay, so there's something about a feeling in your perspective, my beliefs, a perception, an emotional perspective, how I filtered what happened. Yep, yeah. Nice. So those are the things that I want you to think about when we move into the next part of our conversation. It's a perception. It's a perspective. All right. It's an interpretation. Nice. Okay, lovely. Thanks, all. I want to go grab the word that I should have grabbed it from Ziad. Experience. Okay, cool. So let's talk about then what an experience is. In Crucial Conversations, they call this your path to action. In simple terms, we take in information. Our brain can take in so much information so quickly and so much rich information through all of our senses that to the point that someone made, it filters what's important. What do I really need to pay attention to into this moment? In those moments, and I mean moments, micro moments, we make meaning. We take in data, we filter it through prior experiences, through other people's experiences, and we tell ourselves a story. We have an emotional response to the story, and then we behave because of the emotion. And so the word experience becomes kind of a squishing together of the data, assumptions, and emotions, and we make that an experience, and then we tell it back as if it's what others may have experienced as well. So we've got to be so intentional about awareness. What is my story? Because if we're not attending to that, we're likely to behave in ways that are unproductive. So let me give you an example. Let's just practice through this. I'll give you my own personal example to start. I'm not a huge whitewater person, which is crazy. I'm an Idahoan, right? But it's part of, kind of our culture here. So I'm on the river with my sister-in-law and my cousin's getting married, and it's her bachelorette trip, and it's one of the 5. I can't remember if it's the Payette or if it's the salmon. We're on a big, scary rapid, and I'm not happy. And I am sitting with my sister-in-law next to her, and I am paddling as I'm being shouted at to paddle, and I am praying, and my eyes are closed, and all I'm thinking is, let me live, let me live, let me live, let me live, let me live. My sister-in-law is literally sitting right next to me, and she's paddling and paddling and paddling, and she's going, woo! Yeah! Whoa! That was great! Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Data. We're both having the exact same experience. There's the experience, right? My prior experience says water is scary, water is dangerous. I'm not a strong swimmer. I'm not a huge adrenaline junkie. So I'm taking in all this data, and the story I'm telling myself as I'm in danger, I feel fear. So I behave in that way. She is taking all in the same data, and she's filtering it through her own experiences, which include a far more adventuresome style and spirit. She's experiencing elation and behaving that way. Okay? We can, this is human nature, and this is important to Crucial Conversations. We can take events and either assume about them things that are productive or assume about them things that are unproductive. So here's your practice. You set a meeting with this guy named Frank, with whom you have worked for a while. Frank is very smart. He often speaks over people in meetings. In the last meeting you were in, Frank shared some information that you weren't aware of that might have an impact on your project. Data. Data, 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 data. Now, if you wanted to tell a story that was not productive, what might you tell yourself about Frank? Using the chat, what's something you might say about Frank? He's holding information. He doesn't communicate. He won't listen this time either. He doesn't listen. So how do you feel about Frank? Disempowered. Yeah. I feel sad. I feel disappointed. I feel frustrated, annoyed, irritated, disrespected. And here's your behavior. Barbara says, I don't want to work with him. When I feel that way about somebody, I don't want to work with him. I don't trust him. And in the future, now let's play off of Cynthia's response, because right now and going forward, I am not going to trust him. How will I behave? Right? Those are the things we need to explore. I'm going to be guarded. I'm not going to share information as freely. I might avoid Frank in future conversations. I might even tell others how untrustworthy he is. Now, let's think about this. Let's kind of process through this in a moment. Your behaviors become other people's data. When you avoid, this is just a great example, no respect, right? When you avoid, when you get quiet and don't share what you need, want, think, and feel, when you don't trust and thus move away from or tell stories about other people, your behavior becomes other people's data. And now they're going to make assumptions about your intent. They're going to make assumptions about your motives. So having an effective conversation that's really complex and emotionally charged means getting clear and getting positive. And I don't mean like happy, yay, positive. I mean intentionally motivated by something that's productive rather than something that's destructive. Tell a different story about Frank. He's smart. He speaks over people at meetings. What's another story we could tell that's positive, that's affirmative about Frank? he does know a lot, and he's a super busy guy. Yeah. And do we want to really tap that knowledge? Such a privilege to be hanging out with such an enthusiastic guy. He loves to share. He's often right. Wow. Even just talking about it that way, I'm starting to physically feel different, which means my emotions are going to feel different. As you've described it, I know I don't choose these examples lightly or in a vacuum. So now as you're describing this, I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I misheard. Maybe he did share it with me. Maybe I should ask a different question. And now I'm starting to feel curious. And now I'm starting to feel compassionate. I'm even kind of feeling generous because Frank is a decent guy who has a lot of enthusiasm and great knowledge. And I'm more likely to behave with him in a productive way if I can see him that way. And if my motives are based on that. Following? Good. Okay. Oh, yeah. I mean, let's give him the grace of he may not have thought to share. Maybe he thought he did share. Right? Separating facts from stories. He's rude is a story. He started talking before I finished my sentence is a fact. She's unreliable. She gave me the report at 1 p.m. when I needed it at 9 a.m. He's disorganized. He couldn't find the file when I asked for it. Right? We attach so much meaning to behavior when the fact is something that we can interpret in ways that are far more effective and productive for our teams. Now, go back to your journaling. Go back to your reflective practice. Read back through this. Have you maybe been telling stories or facts? Circle all the things in your reflection that are facts. Draw a line through anything that's a story, an assumption, a perception, a judgment. What are you noticing? That's pretty good, actually. Yeah. Yep. Not a single circle. Yeah. The only thing I know for sure is I'm frustrated, and you having a feeling is real. You get a chance. Yeah. See, you get a chance to kind of retell your story, Tim, in a way that's good for both. So now you can kind of see the value of this activity as you start to prepare to have a conversation with someone. If there's someone you need to have a conversation with, separate your facts from your stories. Because part of your job in a conversation, because you have the awareness that the conversation needs to be held, is to get your motive into a position that people can hear it. Oh, the story was also all about you. That's a really good point. Yep. Yeah, it is. And it's, I mean, there's something, this is a phrase that I really struggle with in organizations. Just assume positive intent flies in the face of biology, and every fiber of our body struggles to do this because our nature, physically, biologically, is to look for fearful things we should be afraid of. And it takes a really higher level of emotional self-awareness to acknowledge the negative emotion, tie it back to the negative story, retell the story in a way that's expansive and productive for both, and then hold a conversation about that. Great work. So what you have to attend to is twofold. When we are faced with other people's irrationality, strong emotion, even attack, abuse, or behavior we don't have attached good meaning to, we're going to behave in one of two ways. In the biology world, they call it fight, flight, or even freeze, they'll add to that one. In communications, we call it silence or violence. Silence is a withdrawal behavior. It's an avoidance. It's what we talked about doing with Frank. I'm going to avoid him. I'm not even going to talk to him. I'm leaving. Okay. Our option, if we're not silence people, is violence. And we have to recognize that our behaviors are survival mechanisms. Now, we're not trying to keep ourselves safe from marauding tribes with spears trying to steal our fire. What we're trying to do in these spaces, because we're biologically wired to do this, is identify risk and keep ourselves safe within it. Think about your work and world. Is there anything that's truly fight or flight, or is it more about managing perception of self or what others may think of you, right? There's this kind of reflexive process we need to be thinking about. Most often, when we move into silence or violence, we do this with no conscious thought whatsoever. We just do it. And that's why you got to attend to your story. Because if you're feeling emotions that are eliciting silence or violence, remember two things: you're likely to be behaving in a way that's going to become other people's data, which is harmful to the relationship. And in so doing, you're likely to evoke from them the same behavior, defensiveness, which looks like their silence or violence. Okay? Functional reality, this is biology. We're not bad people. We all do this to a degree. Most people go to silence and then kind of go back and forth. Like we suppress, we avoid, we withdraw, and then we explode. Because we've been suppressing about a lot of things that may not even be related to the current situation, but we've taken so much care to keep ourselves safe psychologically that something can cause us to behave in a way that's unproductive at someone else. Bottom line, neither of these are good strategies to help you move a conversation forward. If you're silent, you're holding back on what you need, want, think, and feel. And Brene Brown is a author and scientist that does a lot of study around these behaviors. And she says, clear is kind. If you're not saying something to somebody in a clear way, being silent, you're not helping them be successful. If you're violent on that side of it, we would call that more aggressive behavior. The harm is different, but it's still harmful. In fact, it can be more harmful because our brains can perceive, especially high aggression, as physical attacks. Our brain may even experience that and be traumatized. That's why, David, when you're talking about just thinking about it, you kind of, our brains hold memories of these kind of strong emotional experiences. Bottom line, neither of these are helpful. Remember, your behavior becomes other people's facts. And the power of really being intentional about your conversation is to focus on managing yourself so that others can see you and hear you and be a party to a mutual purpose. Go back to your chat, if you would, for a moment. Do you know what your style is generally? Do you go to silence or violence? Think about the conversation you wrote down. Just thinking about their behavior, what did they do? Did they withdraw? Did they attack? Did they avoid by changing the subject? Yeah. So important to be aware of, because remember, that's behavior that people are experiencing that they're going to attach meaning to, and it may not be the intent you want to express. Okay. There's the toggle back and forth. Okay. Slido, we've got the QR code back up. Yes, Lisa, you're exactly right. When you're silent, you don't share, and that's a gap in knowledge, which can help people move problems forward. Go back to your original story, or in any other situation. Can you think of a time when your strong negative emotions resulted in behaviors that were unproductive? I know. The number 3 is tempting. That's now number 2. It just made me laugh. Kind of the irony of the robot answer is, unless you're a sociopath, you're being driven by emotion, even if you're not aware of it. And that's why in my coaching, I focus so much on emotional self-management and emotional awareness. Yeah, it's real, right? This is real. These impacts are real. These behaviors are real, and they can harm. Tell me about the impacts of those negative emotions. There's a little more typing probably that's happening in this particular poll. Strained relationships. Yeah. Shut down. Relationships suffer. Yep. Yeah. Remember from the very beginning, when the stakes are high, the introduction of emotion can further polarize people rather than bring them together. Yeah. Down productivity, misunderstanding, lost friendships and relationships, lack of trust. I think it's, as a leadership coach, it's an important process to kind of question the impact. What do you want for your relationships? What do you want for organizational outcomes? And the bummer about this stuff is you can really shake your own confidence when these kinds of events happen, because if you're a self-aware human being to any degree, you're going to feel some natural shame or fear or anxiety or embarrassment when you behave in a way that's unproductive, which unfortunately becomes a spiral where now we're avoiding more. The spiral is also resulting in less influence on people. It can impact reputation. So managing for the high emotions, especially the high negative emotions, to avoid, to lessen this kind of output is really the work of a crucial conversation, being so present to what you need, want, think, and feel, and being as present to the other person, recognizing your behaviors become other people's data, and consistently aligning your emotions with a story that's productive. Okay, thanks for sharing your I really appreciate. This is all anonymous, so there's no names attached to this, but I appreciate your sharing and your vulnerability in this space. How in the moment to get past that, right? You're having a high emotion. You can start to see your behavior devolving. Why am I yelling all of a sudden? Why is my fist raised? People who are really good at this stuff have what I call, really the framing that I work from most often in coaching is emotional intelligence. The ability to have strong emotions and be subject to them, assess objectively the source of the emotion and the impact of the emotion, and choose to respond in productive ways. To ask yourself questions is one of the most powerful means of taking back the electrical impulses in your brain from the amygdala to the neocortex. So your frontal lobe is where you do your problem solving. If you ask yourself questions, you can turn your emotions around. Asking questions of yourself in the moment as you're emoting. Wait, what is this about? What do I believe is happening here? What do I really want? This is a doozy. How might I be contributing to this? That can take you back on your heels for a moment and give you a chance to reassess the outcomes you want and reorient to a more productive story and more effective emotions. So your behaviors are going to be more engaging, more influential in a positive way. Here's another good one. How could I be wrong? So two parts you get in that. You get the biology of stopping the electrical impulse to your amygdala, which is flooding your body with adrenaline and making it hard for you to think, and putting it back to your critical thinking brain that when engaged doesn't allow the amygdala to take back over. So asking questions is a powerful tool. Plus you get a chance to reorient your behaviors to something that might be more effective. Now go back to your own situation, that story that you wrote. Ask yourself those questions and really drill into that story, right? Ask the key questions. Test the stories you're telling that are eliciting those strong responses. It's not just, is somebody rude? You guys did such a great job of this. You felt disrespected. And once we think someone is disrespecting us, if someone is violating our values, we are going to dig in more strongly to our story. The better we can explore our stories with objectivity, right? They're just stories. The more effectively we can challenge those closely held values that are based on only what we want, think, and feel, and not on the needs of others. In your own experience that you jotted down, what did you see or hear that led you to those stories? What are the facts? And you can use that example T that I showed you. Story, he's rude. Fact, he spoke over me. Okay, to start to pull that apart and create a greater gap to apply your emotional intelligence. And what's a more useful story I can tell? I have the greatest example. I mean, it's not great. It's great because the learning was there. I'm coaching a leader who is leading a team of people. And I asked the leader to provide me with feedback on all of their staff, because I use the feedback to identify how best to lead a team. So I'm looking across the feedback that this leader provided me. And for every party but one, it was expansive, it was productive, it was action oriented. And then one person was like a completely kind of feedback. It was negative and almost aggressive, attacking language. And I went back to them and I said, I think I need to understand what's happening with this one person on your team. And the leader said, I don't trust, I'll call her Sally. I don't trust Sally. I'm like, well, tell me about that. Because what you're saying here doesn't say you don't trust. It says a lot of things, but I don't hear don't trust. Well, she's not honest. I'm like, okay, so give me some examples of lack of honesty. Well, Sally came to the job saying they could do all of these things, and now I'm leading them, and they obviously can't because I have to go back and remediate and fix and coach and coach and coach. So they weren't honest with me. And as we've dug in to this leader's values, transparency is a huge value for this leader, and they're feeling very frustrated. They didn't think the person was being transparent about their skills. And it created a huge rift in performance. And in fact, Sally left the organization to a different role. What kind of that conversation about attaching to values was helpful in helping that leader realize what they were feeling so strongly about something that they called transparency was not something that Sally saw in the same way. And so this leader had written this huge story about poor Sally, and now has learned how to look at the experiences that she has, not through a filter of my story or my value is the right way to do things, but there's a lot of different ways to interpret things like transparency, honesty. So your chance to look back at your chat that you had with your friend gives you a chance to really start to deepen your understanding of what drives and motivates you and your stories. We're going to go ahead and move past this simply in the interest of time, because I don't want to, with our little late start, we kind of lost a few minutes, but I want to share this next slide with you because it's really one of the more effective tools I've found. Getting clear about our motives. And I would literally suggest that I'll send you materials from the presentation through your friends at PMI. I literally recommend that leaders print this page off, and before they have any conversation, they get super clear on what is their motive. I think the main question that I think is critical to this understanding your motives is to look at the difference between these two sides. On the left-hand side, be right, look good, save face, keep the peace. On the right-hand side, learn, find the truth. If you look at the left-hand side, who is served by the left-hand column? Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right, Brian. I am served by the left-hand column. It's all about me. It's all about blaming, it's avoiding, it's not being responsible for what I can control. Versus the right-hand side, which is expansive in your thinking. And as a leader or as an influencer, if you can take just this information alone, this is one of those key learnings, print this page out, put it up, and make sure every time you're about to engage with someone, you get clear on your motive so you don't start conversations and end up with them being crucial because you weren't managing for that outcome. And finally, here's another set of questions that you can ask yourself. Get clear on your motives, which are the underpinnings of our behaviors. If we want to know what we want as an outcome, we have to get super clear on that before we start the conversation. So I'll be providing materials to you in the form of slides and reference materials through your leadership at the PMI, Western Idaho group. I avail myself of your needs. If there's anything I can do for you, with you, I do leadership coaching, team coaching. This space that we're talking about now is really a space I have a strong heart for, because there's so much an individual can control that can help us make workplaces safer psychologically and healthier in terms of well-being, and finally more productive as far as business outcomes and what we want to drive. So thank you. Oh, thanks. You're very kind. So feel free to reach out.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Hey, PMI team members, as usual, in about a week or within the week, we'll be sending out the materials that Michelle shared today. So be watching your email from the PMI for that. Hey, and coming up next month at the Lunch and Learn, we're going to be hearing from one of our peers out of Atlanta. His name is Oliver Yarbrough. He's going to be talking with us about adapting to artificial intelligence, why AI is a game changer, and AI's impact on project managers. So looking forward to that in the month of May. We hope to see you then. Thanks again, Michelle. We appreciate your time. Take care, everybody.
My pleasure. Be well.